Paul's favorite tune in the world.
That's right. That's right. And it is one of those every other Thursdays. I'm Paul Thompson, and this is my Project Hell, where for the next 20 minutes or so, Kelly and I are going to throw away the corporate lingo and the PMBS talk and just bring you some no nonsense project management, hopefully, giving some plain solutions to real project problems.
And I'm Kelly Schockler. And just like Paul said, we're going to do our best to keep this to 20 minutes because we realize you don't have an hour to listen to us drone on about project management. And there's three things that we're going to do in this next 20 minutes. First, we're going to share a hot topic with you, and that's the part where we take a deep dive into an interesting area of project management, those things that we all struggle with when we're managing projects. And our intention is that you'll be left inspired with something from the conversation that's going to help you be a better project manager. The second thing we'll do is to spotlight a guest project manager who I'm not sure has arrived yet, but that's okay. And he's going to join us in the coaches corner, where we'll apply some in the moment coaching to help him solve his project hotspot. And then third, if we have a few minutes, we're going to answer a few of your project management questions for those of you who are tuning in today and you might have some questions. So what you can do is go right down to the Q&A here in Zoom and type those questions into that feature. And also, we want to encourage you to use the chat, talk to one another, share your ideas and thoughts. So Paul, you were in charge of that hot topic. I know we mentioned it last week, so why don't you kick us off?
Sounds good. All right. This week, this every other week, we're going to talk about awkward silence. And in order to start, I want to take you back in time a little bit because for decades, everyone knew people were not meant to go faster than the speed of sound, right? In fact, scientists had theorized that at those speeds, the sound vibrations would tear you apart limb from limb. But it wasn't until October 14th, 1947, that a young Air Force captain named Chuck Yeager created a sonic boom that was heard around the world as he flew over 662 miles an hour. And while Chuck Yeager proved that the sound barrier could be broken, these days, most of us find it incredibly difficult to remain comfortable when the volume's turned way down low. And you know, all eyes are on you. When you ask one of those really hard questions to a group or to another person and no one answers, crickets.
Yeah, so happy to climb in that time machine and hashtag nerd facts from Paul. So, yeah, I think we've all been in those meetings or presentations where there's a question asked or there's information shared and the room just goes silent. And so, what we get nervous. Some people want to feel the air. I know I get guilty of that a lot. And sometimes we don't know what to do exactly. And I think more than a lot of other things that we need to learn, silence might be the hardest technique because it goes against our instincts. We just want to fill in the blanks, the air, and that awkwardness. So we start talking because we don't know what else to do. And so, how do we get comfortable with the silence? How do we embrace it and leverage it? That's my question.
That's right. And I'm a big believer in using silence to your advantage. But it takes practice, as Kelly said, right? It feels awkward. It starts to vibrate. Um, but if you ask a question and just then stop and listen, eventually you're going to get an answer, because sometimes it's not that the other person doesn't want to, or they're thinking it through, right? If you asked an open-ended question designed to draw them in to get information beyond just a yes or no answer, they may take some time to think about it, and you want to offer that space to them and not feel like they have to be doing something. They're thinking it through. So, yeah, you can always offer that time. And if it feels really bad, just count to 10 again. You'll get through it and they will come back with an answer.
They will. And I think it's great to give that space because, like you said, not everyone thinks the same. We've got people in our meetings, in our groups, they don't think the same way that a lot of us do. They need space to process. Well, we all need that space sometimes, right? But you've got people who are dealing with ADHD, maybe with some autism, with just different things that you don't know. And just giving that space will let the processing go. And I've also felt like when I get space in a meeting, sometimes I'll get more courage to share an idea that I might have been holding back on. And if it's just that right amount of time, I find that courage and then I'll share it. And then it turns out to be something that people wanted to hear about. And then, right, we're expanding the thinking and the ideas that are coming forth.
Yep. In fact, you know, longtime host, CNN host Larry King, he has a quote that I really love. Right? It's nothing I say this day is going to teach me anything. So if I'm going to learn, I must do it listening. And I never learned anything while I was talking.
So today our challenge we're throwing down is weave in some pauses and silence. Let's see what happens. That's something that I'm trying to do more of, and I'm seeing some really interesting and helpful results come out of it. So are we ready to move on? Coach's Corner? Paul, talking to you. All right, let's go there. I'm not asking you. We're going. Before we do, again, I want to encourage you who have just joined, use that Q&A feature if you have project management questions for Paul or myself, and use the chat to exchange ideas amongst yourself and offer up insights. All right, so today, let's check. Rick, are you here? You are.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so I want to welcome our guest project manager, Rick. Welcome to Coach's Corner, Rick. And to get started, because we only have 20 minutes, so we're going fast. I'm going to read your question to our listeners, and then I want you to give us a little bit more information about this project, right? That your project hell is. All right, so here's Rick's question that he sent in. During the starting phase of a project, how have you handled multiple product managers who don't want to schedule epic and feature refinements due to project priority? So what else is going on here so we can better understand your project hell, Rick?
Yeah, so from a context, it really isn't, it's phase initiation. I'm on a large program that has multiple phases, and I'm coming in as the project manager for one of those phases. That in the large program's already started, and they seem to have gotten themselves into this momentum where they're moving, doing things, but they don't want to go beyond that agile methodology of looking at that particular sprint or that particular program increment. We're trying to get them to take a larger contextual view. We're working with a vendor, and they've got this system of, trying to answer problem tickets and then trying to do work, but they're not taking that next analytical leap, which is, let's look far enough beyond the program increment to look at the requirements, to break down the epics and the features, and actually document the things that you need to do with the business. So that's kind of the context of it.
Okay, and about how many product managers are you dealing with here?
Well, there's about a half dozen that we're dealing with.
And have they been working, do they work together often, or?
It's a cross-functional matrix organization, so it depends on the particular project. So they may or may not work with each other on a regular basis.
Okay. And why wasn't this project at the priority level that you see it at?
We just have multiple things going on in the company. And since this has already been going on for a period of time, I think they've kind of fallen in a pattern where they're not realizing, hey, this really is a high priority effort for the company. So.
Okay. Very cool. Thank you for that. So I'm going to pass the baton to Paul and let him take a crack first.
Throw me under the bus. Hey, Rick, how you doing?
Pleasure.
Good to see you again, Paul.
Good to be seen. All right. So let's talk a little bit, because you're the facilitator, right? You're not the owner of these epics. You can't create these stories. That's the product manager's role, right? That is a key piece of what they own, to the project and to the larger program. So one thing is, if you can't get them to come around to it eventually, just remember to understand your job is facilitation, right? Not ownership. And I kind of heard why it's not a priority to them, right? It's down the road. We're focused on these sprints. But if you can get them to understand really agile, you're running a number of work streams simultaneously, right? And the way you do that is one of those work streams is way out ahead, getting those epics, getting those stories. So when they come around, to popping off the backlog, the feature backlog, they're ready, right? Because it's up to them to articulate what it is, the requirement. Are you having trouble getting them to articulate it, or just for them to make time to articulate it?
It is really them making time to do it.
Okay.
Is really what the biggest challenge is.
So one thing you may want to consider would be some support for them, right? There are technical writers whose job it is to kind of sit down with product managers, draw them out, and then leave, put together the epics, and then bring it back. That's one way you can cut down on the time commitment to your product owners, because if they don't articulate and these aren't captured, the stories aren't clear, the developers eventually are going to struggle because they won't be able to integrate the features into the code base. And ultimately, the customers can't experience the benefits of the product or service.
So
No,
Rick,
that is great. Yeah, go ahead, Kelly.
no, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say, no, that's great advice, Paul. We can take that back and then do that with our product managers. So,
okay.
So I was going to say, if they're just like, let's get this done and we don't want to spend time on epic or feature development, they need to know that they are on the MVP train, as I like to call it, or that minimum viable product train, which that's great. That's what Agile is about, right? But just to make sure they're clear at what the amount of functionality is that they're going to get to say we launched, and managing their expectations around that, right? So helping them understand what this means in real life. And maybe they aren't really thinking straight and they're assuming they're going to get all the functionality they want, just like magic.
well, I think part of it is just at times they can see the tree, they can't see the forest, because they're trying to deal with trouble tickets for what they've built already. And they're trying to focus on doing that and fixing what would have been MVP deliverables without going, okay, we got to take the next step, which is, hey, there's more coming. This is in some contexts, this is a delivery train under safe where, hey, there's just more stuff coming. It is just coming and coming and coming, and you cannot stop. I think that's the challenge that we're running into. So
that's a good point, Rick. The visibility, right? They can't see it, but also senior leadership probably can't see it. One thing we've done that's been helpful and is add transparency, right? We run all of our stuff with a big dashboard, and one of the things we keep kind of the list of very visible is these are the epics, and you can drill down into the stories and everything, and we kind of color code them, right? Greens are the epics that are well documented, they're all good. Yellow, there's a few things we're still working on, and red, these are just coming to the feature set. And so when we review monthly with steering committees, it's, you can see we've got a full backlog just ready to go, or we're down to the last visible epic and all the rest of these still need to be fleshed out. You start doing that, and the product owners don't really want their name associated with big red dots.
Absolutely. I understand that.
I was just thinking also, Rick, I don't know completely how feature refinement sessions are run there, but maybe it's good to think about doing that a little differently, maybe creating new ways of thinking about how you get those done. So possibly shorter sessions if they're looking at as this big drudge or lift, trying to make it a little easy, a little bit more consumable, where you're really coming out with meaningful outcomes in each session and really finding out what matters to your stakeholders and making sure that that is woven into your sessions.
No, that's a great piece of advice. Thank you.
Because sometimes those sessions can just drag on, right? You're being agile, but are we being agile?
And Kelly, you've talked about coaching as well, right?
Yeah, I think that depending on the level of training that your product managers have received, is there a way that you could bring in somebody to an agile coach to refresh knowledge and make sure everyone's on the same page? Sometimes that's a missing component.
Yeah,
everyone's got a different perspective.
Yeah, we've got a coaching capability that we've brought them in at times. But again, it goes back to this, the tree versus the forest. They'll make some changes and then you think, okay, we're back on the pathway that we should be. And eventually they stand in front of the tree and look at it again. So it's, you got to keep that momentum, that momentum going with them. So, and I think it's really a function of just, the number of things that are going on. It's easier to allow yourself to look at the one tree rather than, keep that large momentum going and looking at the forest as you go through. So.
Well, hopefully you'll be able to take some of the ideas that we have here for you that can apply, whether it be through getting some visibility, some extra training, kind of even bringing in a tech writer to help them with that. But you've got the right, you've got the right problem you're trying to address, right? Keep them out in front of the train so they don't get run over and you can keep the momentum going.
And remember, you're a facilitator.
Absolutely.
Don't wear that hat that doesn't belong on your head.
All right.
All right, where are we at? Katie, we have some Q&As.
Yes, I think we have time for one question. Okay, so this is an anonymous question that was submitted. This person says, I'm overwhelmed with all of the project planning tasks. Where should I start?
That is a common feeling amongst project managers, overwhelmment. It's hard to get out of it sometimes. My quick answer would be know who your key stakeholders are, because if you don't know that, you won't be able to start getting your scope definition nailed down. You can jump into all the planning that you want, but if you don't know who the right people are to help you define scope, you're dead in the water, as they used to say when I was in commercial fishing up in Alaska. Not going anywhere.
Oh, that's right. You do need to build those relationships, right? You need to have that conversation with the people that are going to give you your guiding principles, your scope. And Kelly, I think getting scope is a huge deal, right? What's in scope, also start writing down what's out of scope, and then you can start to see what you're going to have to build your plan around and what's going to be left off. It really does start to help play. There's a book called The Checklist Manifesto that I would recommend to everybody. And I'm sure we'll include it in the show notes when this gets posted up to our YouTube channel. But that talks about setting the right tone and where you want to capture to get your tasks. And it's a really good read from a doctor who figured out that I just like, test pilots, Chuck Yeager, I need a checklist before I climb into that seat of what I need to do real quick. And that alone is worth the read. So that would be a good place to also kind of build that knowledge of where to start.
Yeah, that's a great book and also great advice. I know I was recently involved in a project where everyone was assuming that iPads were in scope for the end users, which was a normal assumption, but it wasn't in scope. We ended up the project manager ended up going back and getting a change request and got the funds added in to get those iPads, but it was a good lesson in out of scope. name it, call it out.
You don't call it out, somebody assumes it's in.
All right, well, I think that is time. We're going to wrap up this episode of My Project Hell. Thank you for those of you who dropped by today, or for those who picked us up on our YouTube channel. That's where you can get all of our replays of our My Project Hell episodes. Also, we want to encourage you. Paul and I both have websites for our companies, MetaGuire for Paul and kellyschockler.com for myself. You can get more information about who we are and what we do there. And if you had a question today in the Q&A, or you just want to talk to us, feel free to hit us up at our free discovery call links. Those are in the post-show email that you're going to get probably in the next 24 hours.
And I hope you guys really did enjoy the show. I know Kelly and I had fun doing this. Please join us next time when we're going to cover Not My Circus, Not My Monkey, one of my favorite hot topics. And if you would like to participate in the Coach's Corner, drop us an email at myprojecthell@gmail.com. We're always looking for project managers that want to climb out of their hole. And in the post-show email, you will find that link to a survey, because we all benefit from lessons learned, and we appreciate any of them you can pass on to us. So thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you to Rick for joining us today, and for all of you who tuned in. We'll see you next time.